Hi, Annie here, and today I thought I would try to do another calm, which is a craft along with me. And so I'm going to be crocheting today, but if you feel like grabbing the craft project or a craft project that you're working on, and or just a cup of tea, or just watching and listening, then I'm just going to try to chat a bit while I crochet. And so the last one I thought was pretty okay, and I think for finding my feet, that one went well. So anyway, grab your craft. I'm still working on this blanket, although it is significantly bigger than what it was. I am happy with it. I've had to slow down a bit on the crocheting, lots of other stuff to do, and I've also got a couple other crochet projects on the go, if truth be told. So this isn't as, I've been still getting a fair bit of the crocheting done. So anyway, I thought today I'd talk about the series finale of MASH, because I'd watched all 11 seasons this summer and I really enjoyed them. I have to say that I wasn't sure if they were going to be too kind of intense for me in places, and I have to say that I cried many times watching, not like full on like blubbing, but I teared up many times watching these episodes. I think that the characters were so good, and the plot development was done so well that when stuff happened, you really felt for the characters, and they weren't afraid, because it was a war that was going on, the Korean War. It would have been kind of ridiculous to never deal with that side of things, but I think as a consequence, because there was this other lighter side, I found it really deeply touching and moving, and I did find I had wet eyes a number of different times. I think season 8 was actually the worst one for me, but and there's a couple episodes in the earlier ones as well. I should probably make a list of really, really, if you're wanting a good cry, episodes of MASH that are excellent to watch. But anyway, I got to I'd watched all but the final episode of MASH when I was doing it. I'd left it sitting there. It's 2 hours long. I knew it was going to be, after watching 11 seasons, I felt like I wasn't quite ready to say goodbye. But I knew that I also really wanted to see the final. And so I did. I sat down one day when I had a good chunk of time and knew I wouldn't be interrupted, and I started watching. And first off, I will say that going into the series finale, the show still felt like the show. It never changed. In the last season, some shows really all of a sudden get that frantic tone as they try to either save and keep it on the air another year, or try to wrap up everything that there just isn't time to wrap up or do storylines that all of a sudden don't quite make sense because it was something they'd always wanted to do. And I get that. MASH didn't have that. And I think part of it was they were on the air 11 years. They'd had their time to do that. But anyway, so I had high hopes for the MASH season finale, but I have to say, when I watched it, I think this is possibly the best episode of TV I have ever seen. And I say that having watched a lot of TV, not this kind of like very serious, it wasn't very serious. It had very serious moments, and that's sometimes not my favorite thing that happens in comedies. It's not a genre that I would list as my most favorite. But this finale of MASH will stay with me as not only a great episode of TV, but just a great life lesson teaching. It was just excellent. And I think one of the things that really struck me is, I won't give too much away because there's a couple things that are really a turn when they happen, and I think part of the reason it was so good was I knew something was going on, but I didn't see that coming. Not in the way that it happened. So we go into the final, and Hawkeye, who's played by Alan Alda, has had a breakdown that has landed him in a psychiatric facility, with the psychiatrist Sydney, who appeared many times over the course of the series, taking care of him. but Hawkeye doesn't quite know why he's there. He knows he's quite stressed, but beyond that, he doesn't really know. Although we hear clues that he thought the anesthetist was trying to suffocate a patient and so he wanted to do an operation on him without any anesthetic. And he drove his Jeep into the bar wall, and you start getting fragments that something really has gone wrong, but we just don't know what. And what I will say was genius and must have taken a great deal of restraint on the writer's part was that when all of this unfolds, everything that Hawkeye had been doing had been a clue. Everything made sense when you knew what the outcome was, when you knew why he'd kind of gone off the rails. And all of these other things made sense. They weren't random. And I have to say that at no point did they reiterate the stuff they'd said before. At no point did no point did the writers feel the need to tell you how smart they'd been by thinking up those things as the kind of how Hawkeye had derailed. Does that make sense? Like, they didn't feel the need to kind of go back and point out how smart they'd been to choose those symptoms or those outward behaviors for the problem he was having. And I didn't realize that until I got to the end and started thinking, I'm like, but wait a second, that was why he was having that problem. And anyway, I really liked that. I don't think you see that very often now. I think there's always the thing to go back and tell you how it had worked out. And I did watch it a second time the next day, and it really is just a stunningly beautiful episode on so many levels. Every character kind of gets their fair shot. Like, it isn't just a final episode that's about one character or one story. And I don't think it'll be giving it away to say that the war ended and that was why they got to go home. But I think the way that happened is amazing. I also really liked the fact that there was quite a bit of stress among the people, the MASH unit, about seeing each other again. That some of them were quite like they knew that they'd never see each other again. I also think it was interesting that not everybody was, going around promising they'd see each other soon or they'd visit each other, which I think in TV land, it's not necessary. I think in real life, there's that thing to say like, oh yeah, we're going to do this and that, especially after that kind of intense experience. But I have to say, for television, I think resisting that urge to give the viewer that sense that these people were all going to be going on and seeing each other all the time and still spending, parts of their life together, because that would have been so satisfying as a viewer to know that, that they were going to go back and the first thing they were going to do was all go visit Radar, or that Klinger and, BJ were going to had made a pact to spend Valentine's Day together, this kind of thing. I think as a viewer, it's nice to feel like the characters all go on together sometimes. And again, I feel like it must have taken a degree of restraint for the writers to not kind of plan that all out. Also because I feel like, they must have wanted to feel like the characters were going to go on together and it wasn't just this isolated moment in time. And of course, in that kind of like war or, those kind of intenser job type settings, or, I don't know how to, but I think that there is always that feeling in movies a lot of times and TV shows where we see them planning the reunion before they've even got home. And I do admire that MASH didn't do that. I mean, clearly not even clearly, I really hope that, Hawkeye and BJ did manage to spend some holidays together, or did manage to, BJ managed to get to the East Coast, to Crabapple Cove for summer vacations with Aaron and his wife. But I think it must have been an amazing kind of degree of restraint for the writers to not make those promises in that last script. But I would say that if you have not watched MASH, I know it's such a long series and that can seem daunting, I'd say the first few are definitely good things. There's some stuff that happens there that really lays the groundwork. Like I said, I think season 5 is quite an excellent season. Season 8 made me cry a river, and season 11 was just more of the same. Although they're all excellent seasons, I would say the first 3 seasons maybe, and then season 5, 8, and 10 and 11 maybe would be my recommendations if you were wanting to like take some shortcuts. But I will say that I think part of the reason that I was so moved by the series was because I watched so many episodes, that I really felt a different connection than if I just watched 10 episodes. And then, and you know, because sometimes the episodes you watch, they're always like the best episodes, and that's great, but sometimes the episodes that are the best because of the other context. And I feel like MASH very much had that integrated into it, that I feel like the reason I cried with these people and my eyes teared up and watered up so frequently was because I felt their pain, because I had seen the joys and I had seen those moments. And I feel like as we got deeper with the characters, their joy as well, that those other heartaches became easier to feel and more deep. And I think the way that the war was dealt with, and there's a lot there I think that is even relevant today, as far as how we support people who are in a war zone despite maybe not wanting to be there or not agreeing with a war. I think it's important to think about the fact that these people are just doing what their job is in the moment. And I'm not talking about people that are doing like horrible like things that are against kind of even the rules of war, but just in general, I think it's important to remember that these are people too. And anyway, I won't get too deep into that, but I think there's a lot that today we can learn from MASH. I think if you have kids that are not like super young, but are getting to a point where you're having to talk about world issues, MASH would be a really good starting point, because I think there's so much history there, but there's also so much that, you know, some things never change. And so the technology is different now, and how we fight wars is different. But the fact that there are people still there and away from home and lonely and sometimes doing things that they're not wholly comfortable with, that they're not okay with. And I think MASH also really deals with the fact, in some places, like there's heavy kind of, I feel like for the era, especially, they talk a lot about the locals in the area of Korea where they were fighting. And I think that that's important to remember too in that. I just think I took a lot away from the series in general, but that finale was like heart-stoppingly good. Clearly not literally, because I am still here, but it was just so touching and moving, and I feel like it's an episode of TV that will be forever with me, that everything will be held up to forever. You know, I used to think the finale of Bob Newhart, Newhart, I should say, the one that's set in the inn, was just like, you know, gold standard for a finale. And I think it's very good and very clever. Again, I won't give away what happens, but MASH, I think, is now just absolutely my top comparison, because I don't think anything will ever come that close to perfection for me again that I watch. But we'll have to see. But I have to say, of all the TV I've ever watched, this is so far superior, that finale was, to any finale I had seen. I will say that the end of The Office ended very well, and in some ways very similarly, despite that it was set in an office and was, you know, this normal, ordinary life, and that MASH was set in a war zone. I will say that they have a lot of similarities, and probably just a lot in common in general when I think about this, and I am just thinking about this, so it might not be completely cohesive here, but I think that the kind of humor, the kind of people stuck together, and clearly The Office is, you know, a more mundane setting, and MASH is set in a war, but there is kind of a lot of similarities in comedic style, and The Office wasn't afraid to go deep either. It was just, you know, a different context and a different kind of plane that they were going deep in. But I'd say that if you've enjoyed The Office, it really might be worth giving MASH a go, because I think that it actually might be a good fit for people that have enjoyed that. So anyway, I'm not going to get too much into that. My memory card has filled up on me, which is why if the angle changed, I'm guessing it is because my camera is starting to go a bit bonkers now with the autofocus. But anyway, I almost made it through a whole row. I'm just short of a row, and I have gotten, you know, a decent amount done on this, and I'll probably be back doing more of these. So what is your favorite, like, gold standard episode of TV, or just an episode that really stands out for you? I have a fair few, but I will say that this one really, I feel like, changed the playing field for some of that. And yeah, I'd say as a finale, MASH is definitely now my favorite. I do have a few other ones that when I watched them the first time, really, you get that feeling of like, wow, this is just different and amazing. But do you have any shows like that? Do you have any, either just episodes, period, or a finale? What's your favorite finale as well? I'd really like to know that. Which was your favorite kind of series wrap up, as it were? But I'd love to know. Give this video a like. I try to put up a video every Wednesday, and I think right now I'm going to have some extra ones to put up like bonus videos to put up during the week as well. So keep an eye out for those, and I'll see you soon. Bye.